Calls were made, dispatchers answered, units were assigned. The vehicles did not arrive, people waited inside homes. Help was 4 blocks away, it could not reach them. The city had not left. The city had become unreachable. Buffalo was built on the assumption that movement would always be possible. Emergency medical services operated on average response times measured in minutes. Fire departments calculated risk based on proximity to hydrants and station houses. Police deployment assumed that patrol units could cross the city within a predictable window. The systems were not designed for interruption. They were designed for delay, traffic, accidents, weather that slowed but did not stop. Winter preparedness in Buffalo meant plows, salt trucks, and coordination between agencies that had spent decades managing snow. The city experienced lake-effect storms regularly. Infrastructure had been built to handle them. What had never been tested was total loss of surface access. Emergency vehicles were assumed to be mobile under all conditions. Ambulances carried medical equipment that required arrival to be useful. Fire trucks needed to reach the fire. Police response required officers to reach the scene. None of these systems included contingency for a scenario in which the streets themselves ceased to function as routes. The possibility that the entire grid could become impassable simultaneously had not been incorporated into planning. Movement was treated as a constant, not a variable. By January 1977, that assumption had become structural. Every hospital, every fire station, every dispatch center operated on the premise that distance could be crossed. When that premise failed, the systems did not adapt. They simply stopped. The snow that fell over Buffalo beginning January 28th was not exceptional by volume. Lake-effect storms off Lake Erie had delivered heavier totals in previous winters. What changed the outcome was sustained wind. Gusts exceeded 70 miles per hour. The wind did not move snow laterally across open ground. It lifted snow already on the surface and redeposited it according to the shape of the terrain. Buildings, parked cars, and intersections became collection points. Drifts formed not as gradual accumulations but as abrupt walls. Within hours, snow depth became irrelevant as a measurement. Streets that had been plowed were refilled faster than crews could return. Drifts exceeded the height of sedans, then vans, then trucks. Visibility dropped to near zero not because snow was falling heavily, but because existing snow was being continuously redistributed by wind. The grid system of the city, designed for efficient navigation, became a system of wind channels. North-south streets funneled gusts that packed snow into east-west intersections. Vehicles attempting to cross these points encountered drifts that were taller than their roofs and denser than powder. Plows that reached these intersections could not clear them faster than the wind refilled them. By the second day, the term, impassable, no longer referred to difficulty. It referred to the physical absence of a route. Streets did not exist as navigable space. They had been converted into static barriers of compacted snow. The wind did not stop. The drifts did not stabilize. Every attempt to restore access was reversed within hours. Ambulances were dispatched to cardiac calls and did not arrive. Fire trucks were sent to structure fires and became stuck 3 blocks from the scene. Police units responding to emergencies were abandoned by their crews, who continued on foot and could not carry the equipment required to provide aid. The vehicles were designed for urban environments. They were not designed for terrain where the road surface was buried under 8 feet of wind-packed snow. Chains provided no advantage when the undercarriage of the vehicle was grounded on a drift. Four-wheel drive was irrelevant when all 4 wheels were suspended above the pavement. Dispatch centers continued to receive calls. Operators continued to assign units. The units were already stopped. Drivers reported their positions and requested assistance. No assistance could reach them. Alternate routes were attempted and failed for the same reason. There were no alternate routes. Every street in the affected area was blocked. Priority classifications lost meaning. A Priority 1 medical emergency could not be answered faster than a Priority 3 call because neither could be answered at all. The system was designed to allocate limited resources. It was not designed to function when the resources could not move. Fire departments faced additional failure. Hydrants were buried. Hose lines could not be laid across drifts. Ladder trucks could not deploy stabilizers on snow-covered ground. Fires burned while crews stood within sight of them, unable to approach with water or equipment. The immobilization was total. Response capability did not degrade. It ceased. The deaths that occurred during the storm were not the result of exposure on highways or collapse under snow. They occurred inside homes, inside buildings, inside the city. A man experienced a heart attack. The call was made. The ambulance was dispatched. The ambulance did not arrive. The man died waiting. A woman went into medical distress. Neighbors attempted to drive her to the hospital. The car became stuck 4 blocks from her home. She was carried on foot. She did not reach the hospital. A fire started in a residential structure. The call was made. The fire department was dispatched. The trucks could not reach the street. The building burned. Occupants did not evacuate in time. The deaths were not caused by the storm. They were caused by the inability of emergency systems to function during the storm. People died of conditions that were survivable with intervention. The intervention existed. It could not be delivered. Hospitals continued to operate. Doctors and nurses were present. Equipment was functional. Patients who were already inside the hospital received care. Patients who needed to reach the hospital could not. The distance between a patient and a hospital became as absolute as the distance between continents. Emergency medical services are predicated on the assumption that time can be compressed through speed. When speed became impossible, time expanded beyond the limits of survivability. A 5-minute response became a 5-hour impossibility. The patient's condition did not wait. The help did not arrive. On January 30th, the governor of New York declared a state of emergency and mobilized the National Guard. The decision was not symbolic. It was operational. Civil emergency vehicles had failed. Military vehicles were deployed because they were designed for terrain where roads did not exist. Tracked personnel carriers and snowmobiles replaced ambulances. National Guard units transported medical personnel and patients across areas that fire trucks and police cars could not enter. The vehicles moved over the top of the snow rather than through it. The city was treated as a disaster zone, not as an urban area experiencing weather. The deployment was not rapid. Guard units required time to mobilize, transport equipment, and establish operational coordination with local agencies. During that time, the city remained isolated. Requests for medical evacuation were logged and held. Priority was assigned based on survivability, not on urgency. Some calls were not answered before the patient died. The military presence did not restore normal emergency response. It provided a limited substitute. Snowmobiles could transport individuals but could not carry the equipment of an ambulance. Tracked vehicles could reach fires but could not pump water. The National Guard presence allowed some access. It did not allow full access. The duration of military operation extended beyond the end of the snowfall. Streets remained impassable after the wind stopped. Plows required days to clear primary routes. Secondary streets were not cleared for a week. During that period, the city remained dependent on military vehicles for access that had previously been provided by municipal services. The storm ended. The isolation did not. On February 1st, the city implemented a total ban on vehicle travel. The ban was not advisory. It was enforced. Civilian vehicles on the road were subject to arrest. The restriction was not imposed to prevent accidents. It was imposed to prevent the blockage of routes that emergency and military vehicles required. The ban remained in effect for multiple days. Movement within the city was restricted to walking or military transport. Commercial activity stopped. Schools remained closed. The population was stationary. In the months following the storm, emergency management protocols were revised. The revisions focused on access. Snow removal was reclassified from a public works function to an emergency services function. Plow prioritization was restructured to ensure that hospital access routes remained clear under all conditions. Vehicle bans were incorporated into emergency plans as a standard option. The changes did not prevent future storms. They acknowledged that storms of this type would prevent access, and that access was not optional for survival. Buffalo recorded 29 deaths attributable to the storm. The deaths were not caused by exposure, hypothermia, or structural collapse. They were caused by the interruption of emergency response. The storm lasted 5 days. The city remained unreachable for longer.